Whenever you're doing your music history, oftentimes great names will show up that particularly aren't necessarily just in the realm of metal, because let's face it, we're all very worldly creatures. Even those of you who will claim to be the most hardcore advocate of one genre will traditionally have a genre that's kind of a guilty pleasure. Now, let's consider names such as The Clash, names such as Bruce Springsteen, names such as Tom Petty. Whenever you think of this, you think of punk, you think of just wildly creative music, you think of Americana, and you think of a lot of charting songs. You think of songs that have a lot of zest, a lot of allure, a lot of energy to them, something that really inspires a lot of people, and also is able to really grab their attention. Then you get the Gaslight Anthem with their new album, Handwritten. Now, slowly but surely, these guys have molded themselves into quite the young act. An act that's been able to really do a lot with their career, and steadily and slowly but surely have been really kind of fusing together many different avenues and many different aspects of musical history in order to try and attempt to craft the perfect album. Now, I'm not saying that Handwritten is that album, however, it is a stepping stone. Their last few have garnered a lot of attention, not to mention a lot of people through these albums have kind of started to compare them more to the three artists that I've just mentioned. More notably toward Bruce Springsteen. They are definitely heading in the direction that the boss once traversed, only in a much different style. They're instead kind of updating the idea of telling stories and making sure that the story doesn't go unfinished. This is an album that is filled with consistent beats, consistent hooks, fantastic riffing, and just an overall embodiment of the spirit of making music. And that's the reason why these guys are able to really capture the attention of multiple different fans of different genres of music. A lot of people are able to come together, and it's actually kind of sad that the fan base that this band has is only as small as it really is. And now, whenever I say it's small, they're still garnered and touted as a pretty big name act by today's standards. But whenever you also consider that rap groups and rap artists such as Lil Wayne, Nicki Minaj, and Drake will sell out stadiums and arenas, but yet the Gaslight Anthem probably couldn't do that even if they tried, even if they sold an Adele-worthy album, well, that's pretty sad. Of course, the Adele-worthy album idea is based around sales alone, and maybe only then would they reach that status. It's a status that's seldomly seen anymore. Artists like Bruce Springsteen and Bon Jovi are the ones that are able to tout that. Even Pink Floyd's Roger Waters, on his most recent tour, so far has not been the highest grossing act of the summer. That instead belongs to country artist Tim McGraw. But on to Handwritten. Handwritten is filled with catchy hooks. There's addictive melodies on this. Not to mention, it's all very, very constructive music. By me saying that, what I mean is that while some of these melodies and hooks can be semi-expectant, it's also done with a certain ounce of creativity that kind of keeps you guessing. It's done in a way in which everybody who enjoys music can really get sucked into this album and really enjoy it. They're very anthemic. They're very, high energy. These are tracks that are written and designed exactly for the reason of a high energy, high octane performance. But that doesn't necessarily mean that each and every track really needs to be in one certain key or one certain time signature or at one certain speed. Instead, it's a diverse group of tracks that is able to really fit the mold well, and the delivery of it, musically and lyrically, promotes that energy. Every single track feels as though they are trying to sweat themselves to their very last pour, to the very last drop is able to seep out of their system. The two covers that are on the special edition of this album, Silver by Nirvana and You Got Lucky by Tom Petty, are actually kind of a nice embodiment of what this album kind of represents. It does have the creativity of a latter stage Nirvana album, only mixed with a little bit more of the aggressiveness that you heard on a couple of Nirvana's older epitaphs. But also, the Tom Petty-isms really link back to the lyrical work along with the Bruce Springsteen comparisons. The Clash, which I mentioned earlier, can easily be seen in the energy level. It can be seen in this idea that I keep on representing over and over again. You get really, really caught up in these songs, and you really don't like whenever the experience ends. You almost kind of pine for it to begin again. That's the mark of a good album. That's the mark of a solid affair. If I were to say any negatives about this record, is that near the middle and closer to the end, it does tend to lack a little bit. There are some tracks that just seem to be okay. While that energy level is still omnipresent throughout all of them, it just seems as though they're still searching for that trademark that they can use to write the perfect release. And they just haven't quite gotten there yet. However, with this album and their last album, they're getting closer, and it's a building process. They're building fantastic, non-formulaic melodies and hooks. Ones that, while you may see them coming, they are not necessarily in the way that you see them coming. And even if you do see them coming, you almost don't mind it because it's something that you enjoy. It's something that's very addicting. And for that reason, they have released probably one of the strongest albums thus far this year in the alternative or just good old-fashioned rock and roll category. So, you have to give them props. I would give this an 8.5. I like this a lot. I actually enjoyed it so much whenever I listened to it the first time while I was at work, that before the night was through, I found myself really forcing myself and tearing myself away from other albums that I had in the mix, just so I could listen to it again, and then listen to it again as I was coming home. This is an album that is very hard to put down, which is definitely a strength. And while it isn't a perfect album, and while you may focus on certain tracks over others, isn't that a commonplace trait to begin with? I'm building this case because this is a band that definitely deserves fandom. And while some people may argue that it sounds like a lot of other things that they've heard, listen to the passion, listen to the energy, listen to the genuinity that this band, and especially this album, really represents. It is something special. If you can't see it, just keep listening. One day, during one listen, it will become known.